Welcome, fellow Disney Channel babes, whether you're from the nostalgic 90s
or the awkward aughts,
or you're giving Gen Z. We're glad that you're here.
I'm Gabriella.
And I'm Natalie, and this is the podcast where we rave
and sometimes roast
classic Disney Channel original movies.
You're listening to Once Upon a DCOM.
Hello and welcome to Once Upon a DCOM, the podcast that takes you on a nostalgic journey through your favorite Disney Channel original movies. My name is Natalie and this is my co-host Gabby.
Hello.
We are two 90s babies currently making our living in the film and television industry, and we are watching every single Disney Channel original movie. Yes, all of them. One random selection at a time. This last week, we watched the 1999 classic Smart House, and we are so excited to discuss it with all of you today.
This film was awesome.
Let me give everyone a little intro before our recap of the movie. So, Smart House is a 90s coming-of-age story that was written by Stu Krieger, the same man who wrote Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century. It is directed by the iconic host of PBS's Reading Rainbow, LeVar Burton. So in 2019, LeVar Burton said in an interview that he thought this film predicted what artificial intelligence and virtual assistant technology would look like today. And Gabby, I am sure we will discuss this later, but he was absolutely right.
We're 100% getting into that later. This movie covers so much ground. We obviously will not be able to get into everything, but there's a lot to discuss between obviously AI, but also just technology and what we thought it would be and what it is now. Yeah, so much to dive into.
Yes. Before that, Gabby, let's jump into our movie recap.
Yes, so in this movie, a young man named Ben enters a contest to win his family a smart house. The house is capable of basically anything. So that can be anything from getting the newspaper via robot arm to cooking nutritious meals to determining the biological internal systems of its occupants simply by scanning their breath. This house is insane. One entry winner will gain ownership of the house. Not just for a day trip, not just for a weekend, for life. You literally put in your name and email, and if you win, you own this smart house. I think that's the most unrealistic part.
Yeah, sign me up. I would do it.
You've been warned and you would still do it?
I'd still consider it, okay?
It does seem pretty cool. And as far as smart houses go, if somebody were giving away a smart house today with just my email, I also would sign up. But this house is even more insane than anything we know today. And so Ben enters this competition. Oh, one thing you need to know is that this movie picks up about 4 years after Ben's mother has passed away. And Ben has since taken over a ton of family responsibilities while his dad is at work, like caring for his younger sister and cooking meals. And Ben just thinks that if he can win this smart house, it can take some of the burden off of him. And his goal is he needs to make sure that they're all taken care of in the hopes that his dad will never remarry, because he kind of believes that his dad dating and remarrying is like erasing the memory of his mom, which we know as adults is not true, but that's how Ben feels. And so he thinks the smart house is going to fix all of his problems and he can finally be a kid. After Ben wins this contest, Sarah, the engineer designer of Smart House, welcomes the family into their new home. And Nick, Ben's dad, is skeptical at first, but he and the family quickly adjust to being pampered under the care of Smart House, or as she is better known throughout the movie, Pat. So everything is going smoothly at first, but then once Ben realizes that his dad is starting to show interest in dating Sarah, the engineer of the smart house, he decides to take matters into his own hands, and that goes about as well as you can imagine. Ben hacks into Pat's control system and orders her to learn everything there is to know about being a mother, mainly using 50s and 60s sitcoms to have her download and learn how to be a mother. Because for some reason he thought that was the ideal mother. Ben is determined to show his dad that he and Angie, his sister, don't need a mother as long as they have Pat. And this begins kind of a downward spiral in which Pat, the house, becomes possessive and controlling and jealous. And she begins to believe she is, in fact, the kid's real mother and must protect them at all costs. And Pat kind of feeds off of Ben's fear And so in the movie's climax, she overrides Sarah's system shutdown and creates a virtual projection of herself, which she deems is different than a hologram. And it resembles like a classic motherly figure of like the 50s and 60s, kind of like I Love Lucy, Brady Bunch kind of look.
Hmm.
She locks the entire family inside, refusing to allow anyone in or out because she believes they don't need anybody but her to make them happy. And it isn't until Ben makes Pat aware that she can't hug or hold the children when they're scared and upset that she finally realizes that she really can't be their mom. This isn't going to work. And so she releases her hold on them and allows herself to be reduced back to the subservient robot that she was at the beginning. In the end, Pat returns to her normal behaviors, taking care of the house, kind of like a Siri, but way more intense.
Way more intense. Way more
Way
intense.
more intense. Ben realizes that just because his dad likes someone new does not erase his mother's memory. Nick and Sarah start dating, and they all live happily ever after, I'm guessing. The whole movie takes place over the course of a few weeks, so I don't really know exactly how it's going to turn out in the end, but yeah, by the end of the film, everybody seems really happy, including Pat. She is like very happy to just be back to her original role. And that
Hmm.
is Smart House.
Yes. So, Gabby, what did you think? What did you think as a kid, and what do you think now?
As a kid, I remember loving this movie. I thought it was so much fun. I really wanted a smart house. Now, I would put it in the horror genre. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Yes.
feel now.
Yeah. No, I a million percent agree. I was going to say the exact same thing. I definitely enjoyed it, but I still was like, this is terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying on so many levels, not only the technology stuff, but even just the fact that Ben's idea of a perfect mother as a 50s housewife was scary. And I was like, this movie was made in the 90s. Like, what is up with this kid? But also, I guess losing his mom so young probably prompted some unrealistic expectations of a mom. Like, he didn't remember what she was and wasn't capable of. He had like rose colored glasses about who she was and what she was capable of. So I can
For
understand the more
sure.
idealized version being like a comfort in his heart. So I'm not necessarily faulting the movie for that. It was just a little scary to see that that was like the idea of perfection,
Yeah, for
which is
sure.
then ruled out by the fact that Sarah is the female protagonist and she is incredibly intelligent and she really is the one that kind of takes over the role of their mother in the end. So I guess the
Yeah.
movie was kind of saying two things. It was like, this is correct and this is incorrect at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit about parenting if you're ready to dive into discussion.
Let's do it. What do you have to say?
So I thought it was very interesting seeing the vast difference in the parenting styles of like his dad versus even how Ben did it when he was sort of parenting himself and parenting his little
Mm-hmm.
sister versus Pat parenting
Oh,
very overprotective. And I kind of wanted to talk about that.
yeah, definitely. What were your thoughts on it?
I feel like obviously no child should have to parent themselves. But unfortunately,
Obviously.
that's a reality of a lot of families right now, specifically single parent households. So that part, I thought that representation, especially in the beginning of Ben taking care of so many things and still stressing over normal things like homework and bullies, I thought that was a really, really wonderful representation that I don't remember seeing a lot in Disney Channel movies or even movies in general today.
No, you're so right. I'd written down my notes that he was an incredibly responsible young middle school boy. And then I realized, oh, his mom passed away. Okay, it makes sense now. And my heart just broke.
Hmm. And like same thing where you're like, yeah, this kid's on top of it. And then you're like, oh, but he shouldn't have to be. He's 13, he shouldn't have
Right.
to be a parent.
No, he shouldn't.
I would say that contrasts so much with his dad's sort of, I called it sort of under protection versus like overprotective behavior. And I think it's because he sees his kid like so on top of it. So he's like, I don't really have to do everything. I could just work and my kid's got it. And part of me wonders if he thinks that is the best way to parent. Like he doesn't want to be overbearing. He doesn't want to
Mm.
be like a presence of negativity since their family's gone through so much. So he just under delivers and everything and he trusts his son to get it done.
There is definitely a sense of he shouldn't be allowing this. But at the same time, I think Ben has kind of, and this doesn't excuse it because he as a dad should see what's going on. but
Mm-hmm.
giving him some credit for the fact that he is working full time and has these two kids and has experienced a tremendous grief. I think Ben also puts on a face of, I want things to be this way. I don't
Yes.
want to try out for basketball. I don't want to deal with other stuff at school. Like, I just enjoy being home. I enjoy taking care of Angie. Like, he kind of puts on this face of like, this is what I prefer. And so his dad's like, well, I need the help, you know? So if you want
Yeah.
to do this, it's not like he's kicking and screaming the whole way. I do wish that the dad had seen what was really going on before Ben had his like explosive moment of like, do you
Mm-hmm.
understand why I never try out for anything?
Yeah.
That was just heartbreaking, that scene, when you see the
Mm-hmm.
dad realize like kind of what he's done. But I give
Yeah.
them both a lot of grace. They're just dealing with so much.
Yeah, they are. And we'll talk about grief in a second, but first I want to talk about Pat and her style of parenting.
Oh my goodness. It's obviously very destructive, but I actually feel like there's a lot of parents like that out there.
I feel like there's a lot of parents out there. You and I have both worked with kids pretty extensively. And yeah, some parents really feel like that's the way to do it.
And I never want to judge anyone's parenting style since I'm not even a parent yet myself. And I hope I wouldn't judge
Right.
even when I am.
Same.
I don't know what those people are experiencing that's causing them to believe that's what's best for their child, but it leads to a lot of problems in the kid's behavior usually when they're that controlling. Like, there is an
Right.
extreme here. She holds them hostage at the end of the movie.
Literally. Yeah, it's like, can too much protection be harmful? Like, are you hindering your kids even if it comes from this place of really caring and loving them?
Well, I think this touches on something really significant culturally that I think a lot of mothers I know have struggled with. And so I'm only going to speak from the perspective of observation here. But a lot of mothers have made their children and raising their families their whole identity. And
Mhm.
that's really destructive when that kid leaves and becomes independent and goes off to school or goes to a job or whatever they do when they turn 18, because then that mother feels like she doesn't have an identity or what is that called? The purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And so with Pat, she became so jealous so quickly of any other influence in their life. And I think that kind of was a symptom of her whole identity being to serve and raise this family, which
Mhm.
as a computer, that is what she was programmed to do. So I don't really fault her as much as I would like a human for this, right? Because, and I don't even want to say fault, I wouldn't see it as much of a negative thing for Pat because she is a robot servant. Like, that is her role. But when you see her in this human figure, it's just like blaring, like jealousy and control, which are just symptoms of like, this is my whole identity. I can't do anything but this. And like, she doesn't even want them to have other friends. Like, she's like, I can't deal with you having a potential other mate, Nick, and I can't deal with you, Ben, like having other friends or having anybody else to comfort you. And I think that just
Yeah.
comes from the idea of like motherhood being your whole identity can be really destructive to you as a person. And again, I'm just speaking from people that I've heard talk about this in their own lives, which is, I want to tread so carefully because I'm not in it. You know, I really don't want anyone to
Right.
think that I'm judging what they think is best for their family. But there is just such a danger to not having your own individual personality and your own interests and things that you're pursuing while raising a family.
Exactly. You shouldn't be a robot. You shouldn't be a mother that only exists to be a mother. You need to be a human being as well.
Yes. Oh
Because you're
my
not AI,
gosh.
you're a human.
That's a statement. I wonder if there are any mothers who watch this and just feel heard by this movie. Like, yeah, I'm not a robot. It wasn't meant to be that way.
Right. I don't know. We got to get our moms to watch this and then they can do a reunion podcast of this.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about grief.
What about it? I hate it.
I know. I think this movie is perhaps one of the deepest of the DCOMs in how it handles, yes, like, parenting and AI and technology, but like the actual deep emotions of grief, which is arguably one of the biggest, heaviest emotions I think humans can have. It's beautiful, and like the crying scenes, like hats off to those actors. I like felt deeply in those scenes, and I remember feeling that as a child. This was a movie that made me cry as a kid, having not really experienced grief as a child, the littlest bit, but not like super super close to me people.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as an adult, having experienced more personal grief, I was like there with Ben. And like,
Mm.
I I have done the sit there and watch old videos of the two of you together and just sob about it. I have done the stay busy, take on too much responsibility so that the thoughts don't come into your brain. I've done the bottle it up and don't talk to everybody and unleash it all at once type of grief. I feel like the portrayal of how that can impact you was so real in this movie, and I loved that.
Mm. I like that they covered all that ground in such a short time and in such a young kid, because it grief is not, it has no prejudice. It's going to affect everyone involved.
Right. Yeah. And I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't know the 10 stages of grief or 6 stages of grief or whatever it is, but I would be curious to see if he actually does all of those. I guess the first one is denial, right? And he doesn't have that because it happened so long ago. But
Yeah,
I
I was
wonder
going to
if,
say this is 4 years later, so he might be kind of like reprocessing some of the things he's already been through many times.
yeah, especially as Pat becomes more of a maternal figure. And even as
Hmm.
Sarah becomes more present in his dad's life.
Yep.
It's one of those wounds you think is healed, but as something comes up to trigger it a little bit, it's it's just as ugly as it used to be.
Right. And he's right on the cusp of acceptance by the end of the movie. I
Mhm.
would say he probably comes to a place of acceptance by the end of the movie. And so it's like that calm before the storm kind of, but in reverse, where
Yeah.
it's like right before things get better, they have to get worse. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
exactly what happened here. He had to go through this one last super traumatic experience to get to a place where he could accept, like, what I thought was reality isn't actually reality. And it's
Mhm.
okay if I accept this new thing.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready for the white whale, the big one?
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about technology.
Yes. So before we jump into the AI conversation, Gabby, I know you wanted to talk about the differences between what the 90s thought technology would look like versus kind of what it actually looks like today. So I'm going to let you take that away.
Yeah, and also what technology was, my goodness. So, one of the biggest examples of this that I saw was the missing the phone call thing. Bro,
Mhm.
today we have such ready access to one another. If you win a contest and someone tried to call you and your phone even went to voicemail, like you've lost the contest. They're going to move on to the next person
That's
because
what I
there's
said to my husband when we were watching. I was like, that's so unrealistic. They would move on to the next person.
they would move on to the next person. But I think back then, one, there was so much less access, right, to people. Like there is a reality that if somebody else was using the computer, you couldn't call that person. Lines were busy. People were just more patient back then because there wasn't this
Mhm.
instant gratification culture that we now have with cell phones and computers in the palm of our hand. So just even the fact that he was able to win this contest through multiple phone calls and like having it announced in the paper before any contestant confirmed winning it,
Right. Exactly.
I was
Exactly.
like, okay, so that's telling about where we're at now and that people are just so quick to move on or discount people if things don't go exactly the way that they need to go, exactly according to the system. And this movie was right at the height of like technology making its ramp up into what we know
Mhm.
now. And so there's like this like excitement over it more than even fear at that time. And I'm just like, you don't even know. It's all about to change. Like, it's not that
Right.
exciting, guys. Because, they have all this stuff that they're like, this makes our lives easier. And I'm like, yes, but it's also going to make your life more stressful. You're going to know
Oh,
more
for
about
sure.
wars. You're going to know more about pain in the world instantly. And most likely, there's going to be not much you can do about it. And it's just going to produce a lot of anxiety. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just interesting to see the optimism before the downfall. Not to say that
I
technology is all bad now, but it's created a lot of problems that were not foreseen.
Yeah, and I feel like something that wasn't predicted earlier on, like they were just striving so much to get us to this place, not understanding that the burden of knowing too much, the burden of knowledge is so painful for too many
Yes.
people. Like, we weren't supposed to know as much as we know. Like, all of these things that are living in our brains, how wonderful that we can Google anything. But we weren't supposed to be able to do that. We weren't supposed to be
Right.
able to keep all the facts that are in our brains and all of the people's lives who we're supposed to keep up with through social media. We're only supposed to know like 40 people. I know like 2,000 people. That's too many, you know?
Yes. It can be great if used and wielded properly, but there is no training course in how to wield technology properly. And that's a problem because none of us know how to. We are running rampant with this thing that's more destructive than smoking or drinking
Mm-hmm.
abusively. Like, it is so dangerous when used incorrectly. And I think that's a massive problem in our culture right now. And I think that the fact that we have lost our ability to be patient, that we demand instant gratification, that we have like memory problems. Do you remember memorizing phone numbers? I don't
Yeah.
have my own sister's phone number memorized. Sorry, Taylor. I'm sure you're listening to this. I don't. And it's taken me so long to memorize my husband's only because I have to put him on my emergency contact forms.
Yeah,
Like,
homie, I don't know
my
my
memory.
husband's phone number. I don't.
Mm-mm. And now with ChatGPT, I'm like, Google, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Let me go to ChatGPT because we have like the next level. And I know that's touching
Mm-hmm.
on AI, but just like we have this next level of learning, but it's not actually us learning. It's just us getting these answers very quickly and research. Like, bro, research papers used to be so hard. And
So hard.
now
We
it's
used
so
to have to
easy.
check out books from the library. From the library.
We had to hold it in our hands with dust.
We couldn't control F the words we were looking for. We had to scan through the entire book to find what we were looking for and then use the
And
one sentence and then find four more books that had more information.
right. And was it you I was talking about recently with like fine motor skills that kids don't have them anymore because they don't
Yes.
have to write with a pen and paper? Or like even when
Yes.
I'm writing, my hand starts cramping. Like it's like I don't know how to do this anymore.
Yes, same. And like, I'm a writer. Like, that's so
Uh-huh.
insulting to who I am as a person.
Like there was no Command Z when we were growing up. We were right in this transition too. So I feel
Right.
like our opinions specifically and our viewpoint on it is very much like things have changed so much because we were right there as it was changing. We knew the
Oh, yeah.
before to an extent. And then
Yeah.
like even if we didn't use cassette tapes as much as our parents, like we had them when we were kids. Like we knew
Yeah.
what these devices were. I know what
And
dial-up sounds
I
like.
remember before we had a home computer. I remember before we had laptops. I remember before we had cell phones. Like, I remember not having internet growing up.
Yeah, I remember the home phone ringing at dinner and it was always a
Yeah.
telemarketer. Like, we
Always.
had some of that. So, for anybody who's like older than us listening, like, I know you're probably like, you don't even know, but like, that's our perspective on it is like, we've lived through this shift and it's been just mind boggling for us. It was
Mm-hmm.
great at first. And that's what this movie represents was all the optimism and excitement about what technology can do. But there was warnings in it about what it also could become. I just think the
Mm-hmm.
warnings what they thought was the big fear is what we're fearing now, like
Yes.
technology kind of overtaking in its own right. But I think what was missed in this movie and also just in general was like what it would do to our mental health and our like cognitive abilities and our fine motor skills. That's what people didn't realize was about to be destroyed.
Correct. Okay, Gabby, should we dip our toes into the AI conversation?
We've been tap dancing around it. Why not?
Yeah. Okay. So let's just start with talking about human intelligence versus artificial intelligence, right?
Yes, please inform us all because I actually didn't know all the nuance of this explanation until before we started recording.
I would like to start off by saying I am not an artificial intelligence expert. I will not claim to be. I'm just a nerdy little introvert who likes to research things that interest me. So here's the information as I know it today. Tomorrow, I might learn new things. A year from now, this all might be irrelevant. But starting from today, here's what I know. So, what we're experiencing right now in 2024, everyone is talking about AI and chat GPT and AI created images and that sort of thing. But I want to make it known to our listeners that AI is a broad terminology set. And what we are currently experiencing today is actually what's called like learned technology, machine learning. And the difference is artificial intelligence can think for itself. It can emulate human thought. It can perform tasks in a real world environment. Machine learning is putting algorithms into technology systems in order to identify patterns, make decisions, and improve themselves over time through experience and through data. So, what we have right now via ChatGPT and all that jazz is really machine learning that sometimes looks like it is mimicking human intelligence, but it's not thinking for itself. And I think that's an important distinction. And I don't necessarily want to go on record saying whether I'm pro AI or not. I don't really have a strong opinion either way, so I just want to put that out there.
Okay,
But I
let me ask you
do
this. Do you use AI?
I sometimes for some things, yes.
Okay.
Like when I am brainstorming things, I kind of use it as a brainstorming buddy more than I do as an idea generator. But I
Mm-hmm.
definitely do my own research because one, it's not always correct. And two, it doesn't always go into detail about what I would want.
Right. It lacks personality.
Exactly. Which is the point, right? It's
Yeah, it
not
shouldn't have
humanoid.
one.
Yeah. So, how about you? Do you use ChatGPT? Do you use AI?
I do. Yeah. So when it first came out, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be a thing for me. But of course, like everything that gets popularized and is helpful, I did start using it just to kind of experiment. The most I use it for is ChatGPT, and in Photoshop, I use it a lot. And I will sometimes use it for video editing. And here's what I appreciate. I appreciate AI for tasking. I think it makes my
Mm-hmm.
life so much easier when I can do exactly what you're talking about, like do this in bullet point form, help guide me in the right direction for my own
Yes.
research and work. On Photoshop, it is just fantastic at being like, remove this thing from the background, remove this name tag from somebody's shirt, and it'll just blend it seamlessly. I think is awesome. Or even for editing in video, I will occasionally use it to break up interviews. I'll be like, can you please cut out any of the questions, in this interview and just slice together the bits where the subject is speaking? Saves
Mm-hmm.
me hours, hours. And I so appreciate it for that. It is terrible, and I don't trust it for any type of creative work. So I would
Mm-mm.
never be like, can you please edit this video together based on what you believe is the most dramatic or informative or something like that? Like, that would not be something I would use it for at this phase. I would not ask it to generate an entire image for me. I'm going to use it to clean up an image that already exists within my control and be like, okay, you can do this little thing that will help me out really quickly, cut out this person, like, really good for that kind of stuff. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
nothing creative, because it's not capable of that. And also, that scares me. It takes away from the personality I bring to the work. And that's why I was hired to do
Exactly.
my job.
Yeah. I think that that's a very important distinction of like what makes something human. And I think something that makes something human would be creativity, personality, emotion, right?
Emotion. And that's what's so scary about Pat is she develops emotions and
Exactly.
stimulus. Yeah. Or responses to stimulus, like her jealousy.
Yeah. So I say I am not, and maybe people will come for me and I'm okay with that. But I am not currently afraid of what we now call AI. I think that there is a very real potential that this can develop into something that could become scary once it does start emulating those emotional and human elements.
I am less scared of the machine becoming human and more afraid of humans becoming machines. Hot take. I think the
Ooh.
exact same thing that happened with all the other technology, where we were not taught how to use it properly. It was just given to us to wield like gods. And all of a sudden, we're all, mentally unstable because of what it's done to us. I think that could happen with AI. We could easily become like the people on the Axiom in Wally if we're not careful, if we just let AI do all of our thinking for us. If people who don't value the creative process are like, guess what? I too can be a video editor and a creator. And then you start getting all this content that's kind of like a little off, but then we start getting so used to it, we just accept it. And I think slowly over time, we can lose our take on the world. Like, we can lose track of like the human personality and spark. Like there will be a lack of spark in the content we create. And then if that's what we're ingesting every day, ooh, that scares me more than a machine being like, I'm gonna take over the world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So then the question becomes, what is the line? Like at what point do we rely too much on technology and make people less self-reliant? Like where is that line? Have we already passed it?
Oh my gosh, I'm not even sure. I read a really good quote though that I wanted to share when I was doing some research just on like general opinions on AI. This is just from someone who wrote an article on The Guardian named Rudy, who said, "What makes this technological leap so different from others?" Talking about AI versus like the fountain pen into a typewriter into a word processor, is that these were tools for artists, but AI is different. It might be the tool and the artist. And I think that's kind of the
Mm,
point of distinction is when are we letting AI do our creative thinking for us? But
yeah.
I don't really know in general, like for other jobs that aren't creative, where the line is. I don't think I have enough information, or I haven't researched it enough or seen it enough to know where the line is. I think we are crossing it and we just don't know it yet.
Yeah. It's the whole thing that we're not going to know until it's too late, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we may have just crossed it without even knowing it, and that scares me so much.
I think the line is kind of something you already said, which is just that it's about menial tasks, the little tasks, right? I don't think there's any problem with us using AI as it currently stands, as we currently understand it, in a way that makes our lives a little bit easier, that condenses our workload from 4 hours to 40 minutes or something like that. I don't think that's a problem. I think that is a great help and not something that we should shy away from just because we're scared of what it could become.
Absolutely. If I think if it's taking away our ability or even like the space we create for ourselves to critically think, that's a problem. I think that might be part of distinguishing the line is if I'm not critical thinking anymore, I don't want to use AI to that extent.
Yes.
But if it's just helping me have more time and space to think critically or to start going in a certain direction for my own research, I think that's great. I want to use this tool to enhance my ability to be a human and give me more
Yes.
time to be a human. I don't want it to take away my ability to be a human.
Exactly. Yes. Woo. Okay. Take a deep breath.
So much stuff to cover from
Yes.
smart. You know, this podcast has really become talking about like social issues and the world
Yeah.
today, which is just sparked from these Disney Channel original movies, which I don't even know if that was their goal. But
I kind of hope that it was.
so some other thoughts I just had that are kind of random. We can just do rapid fire, but I just wanted to throw these out there and get your opinions. So the movie poster on IMDb looks so obviously like Pat was photoshopped in. And I don't know if that was like just because Photoshop was really janky back then, but it really does make this statement on how Pat is trying to insert herself into the family, which so goes back to what we were saying about parenting. But I feel like that was an intentional choice because during the photo shoots, when they were, getting ready to make these movie posters, they could have just had that actress come in and taken the picture with them,
Oh.
but they intentionally chose to have the three family members take a picture together and then Photoshop Pat in, and it just looks really janky. And I
Yeah,
feel like
no,
that's a commentary on her role.
I just looked it up. You're absolutely right. She was definitely photoshopped into this.
And the other three are definitely in the same room together.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Also, I found it interesting, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this. When Sarah, the engineer of the house, says the house is only resourced for about a month, and that's when Pat is holding them hostage. And I was just like, oh, it's not
Mm.
just endless resources. Like somebody has to come in and give Pat the ability to be this house. Like somebody has to go buy groceries and put them in some kind of storage facility or I don't know, system
Yeah.
so that she can utilize them the way she does. And like, how insane that she's stocked for a month of holding three hostages, one of which is a teenage boy. Like, that's pretty
Right.
insane to me. But also
Yeah.
just funny that they did include, because they could have easily let you suspend your disbelief. Like, it's a magic house, it can just regenerate all this stuff. But like, they were like, no, there's a limit. Like, she has to be restocked occasionally.
Yeah, I actually missed that. So that's an excellent point. I was thinking that when she was throwing oranges at people, I was like, she can't just like grow the oranges and then put them in the house herself. Like, that's not how that works. Somebody has to supply these oranges.
Exactly. They kept it very for a movie that's so unrealistic, it's very grounded in reality in this way.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the trademarks of this writer because in Xenon it was the same way where you're like, this is so like funny and out of this world, pun intended. But like he wrote it as something that was like very grounded in what was possible, despite it being like a futuristic movie where we were making fun of them, you know?
Right. They don't break the laws of nature, which is, I appreciate that, even though they break all the rules of technology.
All right, Gabby, public opinion. Tell us what the world thought of this movie. Did it give them an existential crisis like it did for us?
To some level. So I'm going to start with audience score for this one. The audience score was 53%, which is shockingly still higher than Xenon, right? Was Xenon
Wow. Okay.
43?
Sure.
I know. That's insane to me. So audience score 53, not terrible, not
Not
great
terrible.
either. So I have a couple reviews here just from our audience. Wade W gave it 2.5 stars specifically and said basically what would happen if Siri got sick and tired of being your slave and decided to take over your house,
Ooh.
which I think
Yeah.
is accurate.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then I want to know more of why he didn't like it because it's just like that's just an accurate fact about the movie. What didn't you like, bro? Why 2.5?
Tell us more, Wade.
Exactly. And then we have unknown with 3 stars. They just didn't put their name. With 3 stars. They didn't
the
write
the
unknown.
artist known as unknown.
They put 3 stars and wrote, "It's not as terrible as some people will say. It does have some corny moments, and the effects aren't always great. It is a kids' movie that even some adults might like." I'm going to stop you right there, unknown. The effects are terrible. You don't have to sugarcoat it. They aren't always great.
Yeah. Yeah. The green screens were pretty bad. I'm gonna say that.
It was unwatchable at points because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to just
Yeah.
listen. I'm
Yeah.
just going to put my
Yeah.
head down and listen. Now, for the critic score, there is none, shockingly. There were
Shocking.
2 critic reviews, and I'm going to read one of them. In the year 2023, what's not to love about an inadvertently prophetic movie? I thought that was a good way to end.
Yeah. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts in my soul.
Okay, Natalie, tell us where they are now.
For sure. So, starting off with our main character, Ryan Merriman, who played Ben. Ryan became a very familiar face in the early 2000s. Our listeners probably recognize him the most for his role in the other DCOM film, Luck of the Irish, in
I
2001.
can't wait to watch that movie.
I can't wait either. I think that even if we get it on our random spinning wheel, we should wait until St. Patrick's Day to do it.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Listeners,
okay.
let us know in the comments if you agree, but I think we should just plan that one ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah. If we get it, we'll just say, oops, whoopsie daisy, spin again.
We'll just make all of the spinny things Luck of the Irish that week.
Perfect. Oh, I wonder what it'll be. Ooh.
Random generator AI, go.
Yes. So Ryan was also in a huge variety of films since then, including Final Destination 3, and he was a recurring character on shows like Pretty Little Liar. He is still acting.
What?
He is mainly doing thrillers and dramas now, so maybe this movie screwed him up for life. I mean, who's to say?
He was like, I did this horror movie once. It was called Smart House on Disney Channel.
Yeah, and it's given me great experience. Moving on, so we got Katie Sagal, who voiced and then played the living version of Pat, which is the Smart House. She is a widely acclaimed actress. If you don't recognize her name, I'll tell you. In addition to her acting career, which she has won Best Actress Golden Globes for things, she's been in Sons of Anarchy. She also started her career as a singer-songwriter. She's released multiple albums. The woman is incredible. And if you look up pictures of what she looks like now, I am sure you have seen her on your favorite shows. She's a very, very popular woman. Okay, Kevin Kilner and Jessica Steen, who played Nick Cooper and Sarah Barnes, respectively, are both still active in the industry. They're taking on a variety of film and TV roles. They've been on things like NCIS, Supernatural, House of Cards, The Blacklist, among many, 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 many more. Feel free to check out their respective IMDb's and just be amazed by how much work they've done because it's like a heck of a lot. They're still
Wow.
very much working actors. And then finally, we have Katie Volding, who played little sister Angie Cooper. As a much younger child, she had a small appearance in the movie Little Rascals, which is what my husband immediately recognized her for. As I have never seen Little Rascals, I just took his word for it. I mean, like, I looked it up and he was right, but like, don't ask me who she played because I have no idea. But ultimately, she stepped away from acting in the mid-2000s when she was in high school. And she is now a tattoo artist with her own shop in upstate New York, living her
Sweet.
best life.
That's so cool.
I know. And that's the cast of Smart House.
Well, that was fun.
That made my soul feel heavy.
Well, since we've been looking to the future this entire episode, let us gaze into the future of next week.
Boo! No.
Would it make it better if I told you AI wrote that transition?
No.
Anyways, let's talk about next week.
Yes.
So what movie are we going to be watching? I'm going to pull up speaking of AI, I'm going to pull up my AI random generator here.
Whoop, whoop.
And we will see. This is so exciting. As a reminder, in case you're new to the show or you don't know, we are watching all of the Disney Channel original movies, like Natalie said at the beginning. And every week we see which movie we're going to be watching next week so that you guys have some time to watch it, get ready, take whatever notes you want. And so here we go.
I am so ready. Let's find out. It better be a modern one. We've had not too many old ones, but we just talked about how I need a modern one.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
spinning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, yes.
What?
Camp Rock.
Oh,
Camp Rock.
Camp Rock.
Camp Rock.
Hey, that's kind of modern. I mean, like, it's not like super modern, but that's like farther into the spectrum of modern.
I don't want to spend my summer at some camp.
Oh, I'm so excited to see the Joe Bros terribly act.
What? Take it back.
I won't. And when
Take
you rewatch
it
the movie,
back.
you will agree with me. Have you ever seen Kevin Jonas look more uncomfortable in his life?
I'll give you Kevin Jonas. That's fair. But you know what? When we were children, everyone was like, oh, Nick and Joe are so hot. Kevin's so lame. And now as an adult, I'm like, dependable husband, reliable, loving father, seems to have his act to freaking together. Kevin forever. I was
Kevin
wrong
forever.
to judge him in his skinny pants.
Skinny pants.
I regret
Oh
and
my
take back
gosh.
everything I said negative about Kevin.
Oh, on Kevin Jonas's skinny pants
Redemption
note.
for Kevin.
Thank you guys so much for listening today. We will see you next week. Go watch Camp Rock. Let's talk about it.
Camp Rock. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Once Upon a DCOM.
Like what you just heard? Leave us a rating and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at onceuponadcom.podcast and share this podcast with your Disney-loving friends.
A big thanks to Gabby for editing this whole podcast together.
Thanks, friend. And don't forget to subscribe because there's always a new episode on the way. This is Gabriella,
And Natalie.
signing off with a sprinkle of pixie dust.
And a whole lot of nostalgia.